Thank you for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. And the topic today is the news media doing a good job when it comes to Black America. Well, with us to find out some answers about that, Dr. Pamela Newkirk, who directs the undergraduate journalism studies program at NYU. She is the author, among other works, of Within the Veil, Black Journalists, White Media, and the recent blockbuster spectacle, The Astonishing Life of Ota Benga. Such an excellent example of reporting, my good dear reporting friend.
Thank you.
Not that I'm shocked, because at heart, that's who you are, other than being a professor. You know, so much success with this book, yes?
Thank you so much. It kind of took me full circle. I spent so much of my life as a journalist, you know, just digging, looking for stories, and when I found the story of Ota Benga, it just took me deeper into something I had done for so long, and it's been a joy.
And the paperback is that. We're going to talk about it a little later in the program, but first, I always start the program by asking my guest to put him or herself in Black America. Where were you born? What were your influences?
Okay.
What made you this?
So I'm a native New Yorker, born in New York City, as were my parents, and something that I take a weird kind of pride in. I don't know why. Why do we take pride in where we're born?
Second generation New York City?
Yeah, third
Or
generation.
third?
My grandmother's from New York as well. So yeah, I take a kind of bizarre pride in that, and but I'm sure I would have taken pride in wherever I was born. Happy to have been born. So yeah, I grew up in New York, and my journalism career kind of took flight in New York as well. In fact, I started when I was in college. I would write articles for whoever would publish me, but mainly for the Amsterdam News.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But now your parents were not in journalism. How did you find that passion that took you throughout your career?
Which is also great, because when I was a young girl, I would watch this amazing woman, Melba Tolliver, on air.
Our friend Melba, right?
Yeah,
right.
and Melba sporting an afro, no less. And I had an afro, and I was just so incredibly inspired by her.
As were we all.
Yeah, and by her example. I remember the controversy over her wearing an afro to cover Trish Nixon's wedding at the White House, and how they would not show her on air. You would just hear her voice, and she persisted. She said she's not cutting her afro or straightening it.
Right.
And I was just so proud of this woman who in later years became a friend. But she certainly is the one person I would say was most responsible for me even believing that I could pursue a journalism career.
Right. Well, she is, we're Facebook friends.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to pass on your adulation to her.
Yes, well, she knows. She knows.
She was such an example of
Absolutely.
Breakthrough.
Yes.
And now you wrote, it's so funny, I have your book here, along with the dedication that you wrote to me, to Carol in 2004, with great admiration for many years of extraordinary journalism. And this was Within the Veil, 16 years ago, when you talked about the status of blacks in media.
Right.
Black journalists in white media.
Yeah, and when I wrote that book, I had just left the newsroom, and I wanted to look not just at the contributions my generation of journalists have made, people like you, but I wanted to go back to the beginning of African Americans integrating mainstream journalism. So much has been written about the black press, but so little had been written about the efforts of black journalists to bring the story of black life to the mainstream. And so when I started this book, I thought it would focus on the years after the Kerner Commission report in 1968 basically condemned the media's coverage of African Americans who they said the media report on as if they don't marry, die, and attend PTA meetings, right? It was this damning indictment of the mainstream media, and because of that report, many of us owe our jobs, because
We were described then as window dressing on the set, right?
precisely,
Right.
precisely. But that is when the mainstream first took a real effort, at least, to hire African American and then other journalists of color. But in doing my research, I found that there had been so many journalists, starting during the Civil War, who were writing for the white press and whose stories had just pretty much died in the archives. So this book looked at the century-long battle of African American journalists to tell the story of blacks through the prism of the mainstream media and how that has been such a protracted struggle.
And one of my heroes, of course, you deal with Ida B. Wells.
Oh, well, she is the hero, right? I was recently invited to give the keynote at the Ida B. Wells symposium in Holly Springs, her place of birth, next year, and I'm just so deeply honored because, yeah, she was another one who just defied, everything that had been prescribed for her life, to tell the story of black life and to tell the story of the horrors of lynching in the South. And they burned down her press. They
right.
threatened to take her life. They and she persisted. She continued to tell our stories. So yeah.
What I love about that generation of reporter was that I always have this image of them running those presses too, because that's how they turn out those. It was a total hands-on involvement.
Right.
And Ida B. Wells was so brave.
And risking life and limb to tell these stories. When people tell me today that I'm courageous to tell the stories I tell, I'm like, no. Ida B. Wells was courageous. I mean, they threatened to kill her. From the pages of the press, they threatened her life. She was courageous, truly courageous.
So what you're in charge of the undergraduate studies at NYU now, and you've written this book that I hope you'll be updating soon to talk about what's happened recently. Not all good news, I might suggest. What do you tell your students about covering race and about being brave as they're going out to do stories?
Well, some of my students will pursue journalism, others won't. But what I tell all of them is that they have to get in touch with their empathy. That looking at race in America is having the ability to tap into your own empathy. When I teach a class called so-called minority portrayals, because who's a minority really?
Right.
In that class we look at portrayals of women, of LGBT, of African Americans, Muslims, and what these students learn is long before these groups were discriminated against, the Irish were discriminated against, the Germans, there's such a long list of people who have been victimized by, persecuted even by these ideas of inferiority. And not to know that history, it allows you to then take part in that whole cycle of racism.
Perhaps unknowingly.
Unknowingly, right.
Persevering the
Precisely. And, I've had students, Italian students, who did not know that in the 1940s that they had to, carry passes, and that many of them changed their names because of the kind of persecution against Italians in this country. Many, of my Japanese students didn't know about the internment camps. Many of us Irish didn't know that they were ridiculed and persecuted in ways that were very similar to what Africans later experienced. There was a period in history when they were told to look to African Americans as models for how they might behave. So not to know this history is what allows some to then believe that they are somehow superior, and it breeds an arrogance and an insensitivity, and allows some to even slip further into that realm of racism.
Wow. In the introduction, the foreword to your book, Derek Bell, who's another hero of ours, a brilliant law professor who actually gave up his job at Harvard because they wouldn't give a woman tenure there.
Miss him every day.
Wonderful, wonderful man. Anyway, what he wrote in year 2000, he says, profit rather than professionalism has become priority number one. News is defined by its entertainment value. Scandal that titillates trumps substantive news. So here we are in 2016, where Derek's words, as always, ring truer than
Always
ever.
prescient, right?
Ring truer than ever. What do you think has happened? I was reading the Nick Kristof opinion piece where he says that in this presidential cycle, the news media failed, just completely fell down on its job. And in fact, Ann Curry said the networks needed Donald Trump like an addict needs crack. And every day when we were watching the way this unfolded was somehow embarrassing, humiliating for the news industry.
Oh, I think so. It was shocking, actually, that he was allowed so much free airtime, and most of the time he failed to answer questions, and they didn't seem to care. They just knew that having him on meant higher ratings. And I do think, and now it's interesting to see so many of them trying to dial it back and trying to absolve themselves of responsibility. But it was so clear that he was given that major platform. Now, it's not to say that he would not have eventually picked up the kind of rapt
Following that he has.
Following.
His supporters, yeah.
but the media certainly helped a lot.
Well, it's what it seemed to be was a failure in examination and questioning. Well,
Absolutely.
I mean, so it really had just become
There was
showtime.
it was entertainment. It was entertainment, and we have seen for a long time the blurring of the lines between news and entertainment, and I think this was there's no more blurring.
Right.
It's
So
entertainment.
do we come back from that? What's the
I would
what do you-
I would certainly hope so.
So you're giving the news media, as Professor Newkirk, a letter grade of what?
The interesting thing is, because I teach journalism and I talk to young people all the time, they're not watching the news anyway. So there's that.
Right.
It's just not how they're getting their news.
Right.
And in fact, they find it kind of puzzling why I and so many of my contemporaries devote so much time to critiquing the mainstream media, which they don't think is that relevant anyway.
Television or print
Television or print. Right. When it comes to the news media, it's just not what matters to them. So I find that interesting. I push back in the sense that even if they're not watching it and not caring about it, policymakers certainly are, and it still is setting the agenda. But they're saying not for long, not for long. But I still think it's critical for those of us who care about the state of our democracy to pay attention to the news media, because it is what enables us to have a democracy.
Now, you've written about academia and its role in how we understand race and how we cover race.
Yeah, because in recent, over the past year, we've seen these racial incidents at a number of colleges and universities. Most recently, or recently, Princeton, I think, was one of the schools that, or was it Yale? Yale.
Well, name any of them, yes. All of them, all of the above. Right.
Yeah, so, and there have been all of these flare-ups, and, everyone is like throwing up their hands, like, why? What's going on? I thought we were post-race. Why is this happening? And I was just as befuddled by the befuddlement. It's like, how could it not happen? We are failing our students of color, and we're failing our white students in the academy, because many of them would never really have to engage race in a meaningful way. They can get through their undergraduate years without ever having to wrestle with the history of intolerance and how it continues to resonate today. And so many of us find ourselves caught off guard by the racial tensions because we're not paying attention to this long history of intolerance that has continued through the Obama years and will continue through the Hillary or Trump years or Bernie years.
Right.
And until we really begin to look deeply at how policies and attitudes are embedded very deeply into the national psyche, and until we really pay attention to the ways in which that reverberates in our neighborhoods, in our churches, and until we look at it, we're never going to get to that place that we think we had arrived at when we elected Obama.
We had an incident recently with the New York Times. Oh, there are some people who are saying we've had problems before now, but recently this Gay Talese, Nicole Hannah-Jones flare-up where Gay Talese seemed to suggest that she had gotten her job by favoritism and accused her of duplicitousness, and somehow the report ran in the newspaper without giving the reporter or Dean Beckett, the editor-in-chief there, a chance to respond to this. And I mean, it was a huge embarrassment. And he, for the first time in memory, I think, has come out and said,
we failed.
We did a lousy job. And what he said, yesterday's story was flawed. Well, that's a journalist term for it. And Nicole was treated unfairly. But this incident is larger than the exchange between her and Gay Talese. Too often, we are clumsy in handling issues of race and gender, and this story was another unfortunate example. We have made strides in our coverage and culture, but the best solution is to continue building a more diverse, inclusive newsroom.
And the problem is with that is that, you know, media leaders continue to talk about a more diverse newsroom at a time when diversity in news has almost disappeared. The percentage of African American and Latino journalists who have left the industry over the past 5 years, I mean,
extraordinary.
It's stunning. And at a time when we need those diverse voices more than ever, at a time when our demographics are showing the need for these diverse voices in our newsrooms, it's disappearing. So it's really unsettling, and it's led to an impoverishment of the news that we consume.
What can you say to the students, the Black and Latino students that you're training in journalism, going out to look for jobs in journalism where Blacks and Latinos and Asians are losing their positions?
Well, I say to them that we need them and that it will not be easy, but you know, the opportunities for them to shine are every bit as great as they were for us when we were starting out, when those newsrooms were practically all white, right, and male. We still need them every bit as much as they needed us when we set foot in the newsroom.
Right.
And it won't be easy. I mean, it won't be easy, but it's never been easy. And it doesn't matter what field they go into, but this field is more challenging because it does require courage. It requires conviction. Because you will find yourself continually swimming against the tide in the newsroom. And it takes a certain level of courage.
Well, I don't know. So the good thing is that while you are shepherding the students that are coming out of the J School at NYU, you're also writing and working and reporting. Talk to us a little bit about the success of Ota Benga, the spectacle. A story, as most would think, was fabricated wholly out of totally fiction,
right,
that this could never happen in a world that we live in.
Right. Well, what shocked me about when I started doing research on an African who's exhibited in the Bronx Zoo Monkey House at the turn of the century during the Progressive Era in the city of my birth, right? 30 years before my dad was born. You know, my grandmother was 6 years old in New York when this young African was exhibited in the Bronx Zoo Monkey House with an orangutan. I wasn't that interested in the story. It sounded dark, it sounded depressing and hopeless. But what made me lean in was when I saw how the story had been rewritten and sanitized by all of the people who were involved in what happened to him.
Yeah, to the extent of, well, he really enjoyed the monkey cage.
Pretty much. And yeah, so for 100 years, the very people who had so ruthlessly exploited him had the final say on what happened to him. And there were outright lies in the historical record. And some of these, and sometimes you could say it was a mistake or error, but some of this was outright deception perpetuated by people who worked for the Bronx Zoo, people who worked for the New York Times, and a book was written by the grandson of the man who had brought Ota Benga to the U.S. and put him in the zoo. In the book purported to be the story of their friendship.
Right.
So that's
Precisely.
that's what interested me about this story, how history had been entirely rewritten.
And I've been reading some of your comments on the reviews and other articles that have been written since your book came out, and you're saying still people are trying to sanitize the story to somehow make that right.
It's truly shocking. About a month ago, in March, was the 100th anniversary of Ota Benga's death. And so there was a string of stories published. And once again, there came the story of his friendship with Samuel Werner.
Right.
And it was on a respected website. So, even after writing the book, people continue.
Well, you have to just keep correcting.
That could be a full-time job, just for that. And then there are all these other stories that are also sanitized. So
right.
It's really, really...
The corrector-in-chief,
Right, just on this one story.
Right.
It's truly shocking.
So in the end, he killed himself. Tell us about the later years of his life.
Well, he once he left New York, he spent the last 6 years of his life in Lynchburg, Virginia. I could not have made that up if I were a fiction writer.
Exactly.
And he was embraced there by the African American community that included Anne Spencer, who would go on to become the famous poet during the Harlem Renaissance. She was his teacher at the seminary where he first attended there. And so he was embraced by the African American community. He took a number of odd jobs, but he had been separated from his family, from his friends, from his culture, his country. He wanted to go home, but he could not, partly because of the cost and partly because of all of the unrest that was percolating not only in the Congo, but also in Belgium, and there was a world war. And so he never was able to make it back home, and he finally did take his life.
So a tragic story, but now told through historical truth as opposed to...
Right. The whole story was pieced together through archival documents, everything from letters in the archives at the Bronx Zoo, the Museum of Natural History, the National Archives, also anthropological field notes. I found him in census records. I found him in the letters of anthropologists. I mean, it's well documented.
Right, but and speaking of letters, you have edited 2 volumes of wonderful letters, love letters, and letters that had to do with other stuff. But so talk to us about the research for that. 2 very successful collections that sort of prove the worth of the idea, the thought, the exchange of ideas.
Right. Well, I fell in love with archival research while I was doing Within the Veil, reading the letters of early journalists to try to piece together their stories. And while doing that, I became intrigued by the idea of an epistolary collection of African Americans, because there had not been one. There have been hundreds of volumes of letters of politicians, writers, all kind of people, but there had never been a anthology of African American letters. So I started with a book of African American love letters, and it was the letters that ranged. It was like 2 centuries of letters from
beautiful.
slaves, from
Beautiful collection,
physicians,
right.
from all kind of people.
Yeah.
And while doing that, I thought it would be great to do a wider collection of letters between all kinds of people. So there's a section on politics and social justice, across the diaspora, romance, education, so all kind of letters. And the earliest letter was written in the 1700s. And the latest letter was written in the year Obama was elected. It was written to Obama. So yeah, it
Right.
was
Well,
an amazing effort.
We are so lucky that you love digging through those archives and finding these things for us.
Thank you.
Towards the close of every show, and I'm so sorry, we could talk forever. I always ask my guests to finish the sentence. The power, the strength of Black America lies in. Where does it lie for you?
Well, for me, words. Thank God so many of us committed our thoughts to the written word. And it has allowed us to share wisdom of Black sages over the centuries. So, yeah.
Yeah, you would say words. Keep those words coming.
Yeah.
Well, Pamela Newkirk, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We always learn so much, and keep turning out those great journalists. We need them.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and we will see you the next time.
Oh,
Please stay.
okay. I wanted to hug.